Hello, my name is Andrea Alberton, and I'm the Regional Water Resources Extension Agent for the Northwest Extension District in Florida. Today, together with my colleague, Dr. Yilin Zhuang, who's the Regional Water Resources Agent for the Central Extension District, we will be talking about septic system care before and after storms. If you have not heard of Extension before, you may wonder what it is. The Florida Cooperative Extension Service is a partnership between state, federal, and county governments to provide science-based, research-based knowledge to the public. The University of Florida, together with Florida A&M University, administers the Cooperative Extension Service. There is at least one extension office in each county. As I mentioned before, I work in the Northwest Extension District, which is highlighted here in yellow, cover an area of 16 counties in the Panhandle. My colleague, Dr. Zhuang, is the Regional Water Resources Agent in the Central District, highlighted here in orange, which includes 11 counties. There are a total of 5 extension districts in Florida. So this webinar is part of the Florida Well Owner Network. This program is an extension program that aims to educate residents about well water quality and quantity and best practices to ensure well maintenance and groundwater protection. The program is also meant to facilitate access to well water testing and provide information about treatment options if problems are found. We also want to complement efforts by the Department of Health in Florida and the Florida Department of Environmental Protection to increase awareness among Floridians about best practices regarding wells, septic systems, and drinking water quality. So why did we develop the Well Owner Network? Let's take a look at how many private wells we have in Florida. Basically, a lot of people in Florida, an estimated 2.5 million Floridians, which is about 12% of our population, relies on private wells for home consumption. It's estimated, it's a conservative estimate, that we have at least 800,000 private wells in the state. Private well users control the management and protection of their wells, unlike people that are on public water supply. So US EPA safe drinking water regulations do not apply to residential private wells, and private well users are in charge of ensuring that their well water is safe to drink. In Florida, private wells are under the purview of the Florida Department of Health. The health department provides information to well users. Some county health departments also offer testing services. If they do not provide services, they can point you to a commercial certified lab for testing. Department of Health also issues well permits for new constructions and repair. However, depending on where you are in Florida, the well permits may be issued by water management districts instead. Florida Department of Health also has a well surveillance program that it runs in conjunction with the Department of Environmental Protection. The program identifies and monitors threats to drinking water supply. It ensures that contaminated sites posing the greatest risk get cleaned up first, and it prevents long-term consumption of contaminated drinking water. These threats are usually man-made contaminants. For example, the pesticide EDB, or ethylene dibromide, is an example of a contaminant that is monitored in certain parts of Florida under this program. So what about septic systems in Florida? And today our webinar does focus on these systems. So nearly 1 in 3 households in Florida depends on septic systems for wastewater treatment. It's more than 2.5 million systems in use across the state of Florida. The Florida Department of Environmental Protection, through their basin management action plans, have identified conventional septic systems as a major source of nitrogen to impaired water bodies. So what will we cover in this presentation? Dr. Zhuang will go over the basics of a conventional septic system and the major impacts of hurricanes. And then both she and I will discuss different aspects of how storms impact septic systems and the care that you should take with these systems before and after a storm to ensure that they continue to work properly. With that, I will hand the presentation off to Yilin.
Thank you, Andrea. So now let's have a look at the basics of a conventional septic system. We did a septic system 101 webinar. We highly recommend you to watch it. If you haven't done so, you can find the link to the recording in the video description. So here is a quick recap. A conventional septic system usually has two components, a septic tank and a drain field. So for the septic tank, is a watertight tank. It's designed for the size and expected water usage of the home. So in the tank, there are usually three layers. One is the solid layer. Organic matters break down or solid waste settle to the bottom. And the top layer is the oil and the grease. Oil and the grease. And the middle layer is the liquid. It will move on to the drain field. The common materials of septic tanks are concrete and plastics. The size of a tank depends on the number of bedrooms. Septic tanks are usually 2 feet below the surface. They are at least 50 feet away from a drinking well. And please note, Florida code requires a septic system is at least 75 feet away from the drinking well, and the 50 feet is adopted from other extension publications, which specify the septic tank should be at least 50 feet away from a drinking well, and the septic drain field should be 100 feet away from a drinking well. And the septic tanks are usually also 10 to 15 feet away from the house. And for the drain field is where most treatment takes place. Drain field is a series of trenches or single bed with perforated pipes. It filters, removes, or transforms contaminants as effluents move through the soil. Drain field is usually buried 1 to 3 feet below the surface. It requires unsaturated soil, and the code also requires the bottom of the drain field to the top of the wet season water table should be at least 24 inches. Now let's look at Atlantic hurricane season. It officially starts on June 1st and ends on November 30th. Keep in mind, it's always good to start preparing early. What are the major impacts of hurricanes? The hurricane impacts can usually be broken down into 3 categories: winds, power outage, rains, and floodings. We'll walk you through your septic system care before and after storm according to these 3 categories. First is wind. Hurricane wind forces may break the trees or bring large debris to your property, and it can damage your septic tank or your septic drain field. One thing you can do is to make sure the trees are in a good condition and secure all the large loose items. Here is the link where you can find more resources for landscape preparation before a disaster. Second is power outage. If you have a gravity-fed system or a typical conventional system without a pump, power outage will not affect your system. It will continue to operate properly and you will be able to continue using your system. If your septic systems have pumps, then the power outage will affect it. So keep in mind limited water usage to essentials such as toilet flushing and hand washing. And try to minimize laundry, bathing, showers, and dishwashing. Stop all water use if power outage is extended or the plumbing begins to drain very slowly. And the slow draining plumbing may indicate your tank is full or the reserve has already exceeded its capacity. So depends on when your power is restored, it may change your decision how to use your water. If the power outage is only less than 1 day, then limited laundry and dishwashing if your system has an advanced pre-treatment component and its power outage is less than 1 day. And if the power outage is more than 1 day, again, it will only affect system with pumps. So what you want to do is discontinue your laundry and dishwashing, limit showers and baths, or at least 1 day. In this way, you are allowing the microbial population treating the wastewater to regain their productivities and properly treat the wastewater. Now I will move the presentation to my partner, Dr. Albertin.
Thank you, Elin. I will now talk about hurricane impacts if your septic system was flooded. So if your house and your sewer, you have a backflow preventer, you really don't need to do anything else. The backflow preventer will prevent, as the word says, that sewage from your septic tank if it fails to flow back into your home. However, the one thing you do want to make sure of is that if you have a manual valve, just want to make sure that it's shut. If your septic tank doesn't have a backflow preventer, then it may be desirable to pump the tank to remove the sewage. But after pumping, you really do need to ensure that the tank is again properly anchored. Finally, minimize water use or flushing of toilets during the actual flooding event, as we heard Elin mention earlier in this talk. You don't want to stress your septic system by adding water to it while there is flooding going on. During flooding, if you have a system that has any electrical equipment attached, pumps for example, discontinue electrical power to the system by turning it off at the main circuit panel. Stop any water usage going into the system because of the potential for limited treatment. If your pumps aren't working, if your treatment relies on the pumps and your pumps aren't working, then that wastewater isn't being treated and you really need to limit the use of the system. Plug any floor drains in the house connected to the wastewater treatment system to prevent any water from backing up through the system and into the home in case your system does fail. After flooding, don't use the septic system until the flood water has receded from all of the components of the system. You really need to wait for that water to drain. If you are using water from a flooded well, if your family uses well water for home consumption, it can be contaminated. So contact a well professional or your county health department about doing a water test. At a minimum, have your water sampled for bacteria to ensure that it is safe to drink. After flooding, you should also call a service provider to check your septic system for any sediment or other debris if the system components were filled with flood water. Check the effluent filters if you have any effluent filters. Here on the diagram above, you can see where those effluent filters might be found. You want to make sure that those aren't clogged so that the water can move through your septic system out into your drain field. Finally, do not pump the tanks empty or below their normal operating level after your system has been flooded. You want to inspect the system for any signs of damage to the surface that could indicate that potential failure is there. So basically you want to check in your drain field vegetation. Does everything look okay? Is any soil washed away? Are there any damages to lids or inspection ports? If you do see damage, then it's important that you call a septic system professional to come help you and assess the damage and decide what needs to be done for proper functioning. Cleanup after flooding. So remember that floodwater can contain bacteria and other contaminants. If sewage has backed up into your house, you have to ensure that you clean the area and disinfect the floor. Use a chlorine solution of ½ a cup of bleach to each gallon of water to disinfect the area thoroughly. Don't dump any floodwaters that have entered the house into a plumbing fixture which discharges into the septic system. You really don't want to overload your septic system, your tank, and your drain field at this time. And again, don't forget to test your well water quality if you or your family rely on private wells for home consumption. Finally, it's really important to think about your drain field and not compacting that drain field soil. Don't drive any vehicles or equipment over the system during cleanup or during restoration activities. Don't set dumpsters or any building materials over the system if you have to do any type of major restoration. And fence off or mark off the septic system area to protect it. For example, if you need any type of tree removal, or if you have anyone moving about or using heavy equipment on your property, just mark off that system so that they're careful not to drive over it. Saturated soil, flooded soil is very prone to compaction, and you just really don't want to compact anything in your drain field to ensure that it continues to work well. It's important to remember that a well-maintained septic system is better able to withstand the stresses of heavy rains or flooding, and do consider diverting stormwater runoff so that it doesn't flow to the septic tank or drain field. Your downspouts, for example, have those turned so that you don't have all of that rainwater going into your drain field area, and that's just much more water that the system has to treat. If you want more information about septic system maintenance, please see our pre-recorded webinar on Septic System 101. The link will be added in it can be found in the video description. There are additional resources if you want more information about well water quality, about septic system in general and maintenance, as well as disaster preparedness. And we have included those links here. With that, we want to thank you for your attention, and don't hesitate to contact us. Our information, our emails are here on this slide in case you have any further questions. Thank you.